Caring about our lives.
Caring about our health.
Caring about our communities.
Caring about each other.
This is our pride. What's yours?
Hi, my name is Itzhak. I'm from Lord and I'm 42 years old. I was born in a city called Rehovot. And until I was 21 years old, I never really, well, you could say that I knew that I was gay when I was 17 or so, but I never did anything until I was 21. That's when I had my first sexual experience and realized, yes, I'm gay, but I was still in the closet, and I remained in the closet for a few years later. Even though I was for about 9 months in a relationship while still in the closet. Coming out was more of an accident than intentional. I went out to meet a guy, and when I came back, my mother sat me down and said that my father found the computer on when he went into my room, and it was on a gay site. Well, you can't really say that you're not gay at that point, so I had to come out. And it wasn't an easy process. For the next 6 months, even though I was still living with my parents, and I was 27 years old at the time, my father didn't speak a word. We never exchanged a word for 6 months, until I said, okay, if you don't want to talk to me, that's fine. But I can't stay under the same roof with you. So I moved out. Luckily, less than a year later, I moved to Canada to study. That was the time when I really came into being gay. I met gay friends, I went to gay pride. I really learned what it was like to be gay, what it was like to be outside. And when I came back to Israel, following my studies, it was, in a way, going back to the closet, not because I was in the closet, people knew about it, but I didn't have any friends in the gay community. It was only later when I met the queer community that I really felt connected to the community at large. It was then that I came out, met friends, found a partner for myself. And then things came crashing down a bit. One of the reasons I came back to Israel after my studies was because I had 6 nieces and nephews that were born during that time. And I wanted to get to know them and for them to know me. After I met my partner, my family didn't react very well. And for now, I'm cut off from my nieces and nephews. It's hard. It's hard to be disconnected from them. But I have a partner. I have a life. And I know that when my nieces and nephews grow up, if they want, they can find me. And I still love them. That's my pride.
Hello there. My name is Friedman. I'm 28 years old. I live in Tel Aviv. And I'm the current Mr. Bear Israel, a title in which I won the last November, and it will be raining, hopefully until the next one. I came here to speak about my personal pride, and I think that the best way to do it is through my own personal story. I grew up in a small town in northern Israel called Nahariya, in times where you got to see some gay people in the media, but I didn't really feel like there is the gay person I can aspire to in my own personal environment. So it took some time to me until I realized my sexuality and feelings that I felt towards other boys, until I got to really name it. But eventually I came out to my closest friends around my early youth, and by the age of 16, I met a guy, and I wanted to meet him. I wanted to be in a relationship with him, but I was in the closet. So I decided to come out to my parents. Unfortunately, they didn't react the way I thought they would react. It was a great struggle to them and to me. And it took a while until we got to understand each other. And a lot of stress was involved in our relationship for many years to come. And nowadays, after having the experience I had as a gay people, as gay men, in Tel Aviv, which is probably the gayest city in Israel, creating my own personal community of people I can really relate to. I can say that I'm proud of myself. I think that has a main part in my gay life. It's got to be my army service. I served in the Israeli military police, and I got to hang around a lot of gay people my age. And it really gave me the confidence to be who I am. And I think it was the first time in my life that I felt really accepted among people I know. But my story has another part. Living in Tel Aviv, growing up, looking at the other gay boys around me, both in my close environment and in the media, I didn't feel like my large body is well represented. All the gay guys were either fit or thin or very masculine or very muscular. And it's been really, really hard to feel like I belong in such a community who's all about specific type, prototype of body. And it made me really sad. And it made me feel like I don't deserve it. As if I could never have proper love life, proper sex life. And as I will never be really accepted. And it brought back some of my childhood memories growing up in a small town with no gay idols or no allies. But eventually, as I got to meet my community, the bear community, I found out that there are some more alternative ways in which I could live my life. And the body that I thought was ugly and not deserving of love can be a wonderful thing, a wonderful instrument. And the sooner I got to accept myself with all my sides and with a type of beauty which might not be the most familiar one, but knowing that it has a place, and it's not about how I look, it's about what I do with my body. It's about what I feel with myself. It helped me gain the strength and the pride that I have today. Being a part of the bear community brought joy to my life, brought happiness. It brought amazing friends who don't just look at you from head to toe with a question in their eyes, thinking awful things about you, but really getting to know who you are and making you feel sexy, making you feel love, beautiful from the inside and outside. And as I said before, last November, I participated in the Mr. Bear Israel 2019 contest. And I wanted to bring to the table, to the front of the stage, all the values that I believe in today. And luckily, my community trusted me that I could represent them and bring all this fabulous stuff to other people. And with great pride, I'm leading my community today. And either if it's taking part in our own specific events, going to parties, representing them at some special occasions of the larger gay community, taking part in every aspect of the life of the bear community. It's something that I embrace and something that I look up to myself, and I hope that I'm inspiring other people to do so as well. So, happy Pride to you all. Thank you for hearing my story.
Hi, my name is Raasel Lord. I have been living here in Tel Aviv, Israel for the past 38 years. I was born and raised in a little island off of the United States called Brooklyn, New York. Let me see, my pride. I grew up in New York. At the age of 16, I was no longer living at home. I was kind of ejected from my home and I was living with my grandparents very independently. I was still going to school, and I knew that I was gay since I was a kid. I remember when I was 9 years old, looking up into the hairy chest of my Italian barber and always wanted to get a haircut as often as possible. I would find myself going to the village way back then, walking down Christopher Street. To my good luck, I fell in, I met a wonderful group of people that really adopted me. I must have been 16 or 17 years old. They were way older than me, in their late 20s. And they were good people, they were smart people, they were professionals. And they really guided me and kept me away from the bad things that were happening in New York in the late 70s when all this was happening. They kept me away from the drugs, they kept me away from the male prostitution, the hustlers that many people that I knew had become. And they taught me that yes, you can be gay, but you need to live a good, solid, responsible life. And they kept me alive, basically. Looking back on all that happened afterwards, I owe them my life. We went out, we had great times, but they were always helping me with schoolwork, tutoring me with math that I was bad with, and we had lots of good times also. After I graduated from university, I took a trip to Europe, and I went to Europe, and I came to Israel, and I was on a kibbutz for a while, and I came to Tel Aviv, and I met the person who is still my partner today, 38 and a half years later, an Israeli guy who we met, and actually we didn't meet and fall right in love. We met 3 or 4 times, and then that click happened on January 8th, 1982, and we're still together today. And that's one of the things I'm very proud of, but I'm also proud of the fact that despite the anarchy that I kind of grew up in or came from, I can be proud to say that I've become a solid citizen. And I'm proud that younger people today come to me and ask me, not that I've become an elder of the town, but people come and ask me how to go about certain things. Back in the 80s, Tel Aviv was much more a small town than the city that it is today. There were actually 2 gay bars when I met Avi way back then. But things were quiet, as in most parts of the world. The 90s came and things started going in the direction of more openness, more liberal laws being passed in our favor. Remember that here in Israel we have no constitution. So every law that has to be passed, any lawsuit there would be about getting equal rights for your partner at your workplace, health insurance issues, everything had to go through the court. And every time that a case was brought to court, we won. This is definitely a cause of great pride in the place where I chose to live. Remember, I'm here in Israel now most of my life, but I'm definitely an Israeli by choice and proud of the place where I am living. I'll fast forward up to 1998 when Dana International won the Eurovision Song Contest. If we weren't on the map before then, and we were, she definitely put us on the map. And all of a sudden, the entire country is singing to Dana International. I adopted a career in incoming tourism, and I started working in incoming tourism back in the early 80s, building tours for people. And the person who hired me came over to me one day, and this was in the late 80s or maybe 1990, and he says, "You know something, Russell? You people like to travel. I know about you dinks. Double income, no kids. You need to put Israel on the map." And he sent me to the States, he sent me to Europe to do sales trips in gay churches, gay cathedrals, gay organizations, gay synagogues. And this is how we kind of started the gay tourism to Israel. And now, of course, you all know about the Tel Aviv Pride is one of the biggest Pride events of the year. My Pride in 2005, a friend here in Tel Aviv, you know, they were already talking about gay marriage overseas, not in the States, that had a while to go, but you folks in Europe were way ahead of everybody when it came to recognizing gay marriage. And the Canadians were actually the first to allow gay marriage, same-sex marriage, between 2 guys or 2 women, but neither one of them had to be a citizen of Canada. So he put together 5 couples. We wanted more, but we were able to get 5 couples, and we all went to Canada together, and we all got married together. And then we came back to Israel, and my partner and I kind of looked at each other and said, okay, we did this for a reason. We didn't do this for us because we were already together for some 25 years. We did it for young people so that they would know that just because you're gay, that doesn't renegade you to a life of being in the closet and being not part of the society. We can be proud of who we are. We have the responsibilities and we have to have the privileges also. So actually my partner and I, with 3 other couples, went to court, and here in Israel, you don't go to the city court, the state court, or a federal court. Our case to have our Canadian marriage recognized in Israel went directly to the Supreme Court. And it wasn't such a long story, to make the story short, within a few months we won. There were 7 judges on the bench, and we won. 6 judges were in favor of us, 1 was against us. He was a religious gentleman, a very respected judge, and he said that the only reason I'm going to vote against it is because I don't want it to be called marriage. Call it anything you want besides marriage, and I'll vote also when you'll have a unanimous decision. We decided that the word marriage and everything that includes was very, very important to us. And so we said, you know what, 6-1, we can live with that very nicely. So after that court case in 2006, gay marriage that was officiated legally overseas was recognized here in Israel. Definitely my pride, both in what my partner and I did, the other couples did, and the fact that here in Israel, it was totally accepted. It was recommended to me when we first started to go to court that we should take our names out of the telephone book. At that time, there was a telephone book, and you had a number. You were either listed or not listed. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to hide. I didn't do this in order to go back into a closet where I never was to begin with. So let's see what happens. We didn't get one malicious telephone call. People would greet us. We were invited to television shows in the morning, you know, our equivalent of Good Morning Israel. People would recognize us and pat us on the back. People would say, Kol HaKavod, respect. There was not one negative incident. Definitely pride in what we did, pride of the people that organized it, and pride of our country. And that's it. Life goes on, and we're still together, moving ahead. And every year, the country is moving forward to become as liberal as a country can be. We've made great achievements in many issues. Gay rights, lesbian rights, transgender rights. Everyone is out there and fighting for their cause, and I'm very proud that the country is moving ahead. But as much as we've moved ahead, there's still a lot more to do. All of us in Europe, in the States, here in Israel, all around the world, there's still a lot more to do. But we must stand up and be proud of who we are, be proud of our accomplishments, admit when we've done something not correct, and then move forward. And that's my story, and greetings from Tel Aviv.
Hello everyone. I'm Tzachee Gropper, and I decided I want to talk about coming out, right? Because it's Pride time of the year, and it's about time to talk about it. I can say that I never really experienced what it means to come out as a dramatic point in front of family members and friends, mainly because of the fact that family for me was not a surrounding of comfort and support, but rather a battlefield. Being around my family members meant I'm going on war on a daily basis. And therefore I had to basically live my own life as some sort of an island, not connected to anyone and anything, just living my life there as a teenager. At the age of 16, more or less, I was summoned by the army for checkups in order to be drafted for the army 2 years later. So I was summoned several times, in one of those times I was summoned to the military psychiatrist. And he called me up, and he actually made me confront with identical issues of myself that I never faced before. You have to understand that by that time, army was obligatory for everyone. Everyone had to join in, guys for 3 years, women for 2 years. So he summoned me, and he was trying to convince me to give up the service. Because back at that time, gay people were not called for service. They got released. And at those times, it was by the end of the 80s, and I came from a small town in the south, so basically I did not know much about what it means to be gay. I heard about it back in the middle of the 80s when the AIDS came out with Rock Hudson and the whole scandal. So basically, he was the psychiatrist trying to convince me to give up and not being drafted to the army, get released as a gay person. And I don't know how, I don't know why, but I had some sort of strength in me, and I decided right there and then that I'm not giving this up. I want to experience what it means like to be in the army like every other Israeli citizen and not suffer from stigmatized in the future for not doing this service. So I decided to go for a full 3-year service, and then I also did my 20 years of service in the reserves. The law for drafting everyone was changed by 1993. I joined the army in 1992. So when the law changed, I decided to experience what it means to be gay to the fullest. So I went to the sauna for the first time in my life. It was in Tel Aviv, the big city. So I went there, and immediately I saw this hot daddy I really wanted, and he didn't really want me, but somehow I manipulated my way to him and found myself eventually sucking his cock in front of everyone. And I felt so nice, and I felt so liberated, and I felt so gay, and I felt so happy, and I was in love. I was in love with that guy, and I had that fantasy that maybe he would take me home afterwards and everything, you know, that naive thought. And so I sucked his cock in front of everyone, and at the end he was smiling at me and went. I never saw him again ever since. But I knew that's who I really am. That's who I really am. And from now on, although still closeted, but I knew I should experience this kind of life more. So through the years, I met others in saunas, in public gardens, until things changed in 1998. Things changed overnight due to Dana International's win in the Eurovision of 1998. And suddenly you felt like it's okay to be gay. It's okay to be different. It's acceptable. You're appreciated. You're part of the consensus. And this really changed everything around here overnight. Our lives became completely different. We became open, accepting, and considerate. And I decided I wanted to experience more of Tel Aviv, of what Tel Aviv had to offer. But for me, it didn't last too long. My mom died more or less at that time. My father left the house a year before. I was a student back then. I had to quit my school then. After a year and a half, I had to take care of my younger brother, who was still at his school time. And basically I had to find a job, which I didn't. I stayed at home. I was lost, completely lost. I was shattered because my mother's death was surprising. It was a surprising thing. It was a shock. I blamed myself. So for almost a decade, I lived at home, unemployed, trying to keep myself sane, trying to take care of my brother. I gained weight. At the end of 2005, my weight was almost 170 kilos. I was in such a big depression, I was in a mess. I didn't know if I'm going to keep on living. I didn't know if I'm going to die soon. I felt really bad, physically, emotionally. I was a total mess. And then in 2005, I had this conversation with my one of my cousins who I felt really close to. And she made me reflect my life with my eyes wide open. She made me realize I need to decide if I want to live as a human being, not as a shadow, as part of the society. She made me realize, and she knew I was gay. She made me choose if I want to go and live as to live as a real human being, as gay as who I am, or rather shrivel and die. And it was a very hard conversation, but it was a very hard conversation, and I cried for hours, really for hours. The way you reflect, if you're honest enough, the way you reflect on your life is not easy. And it could break you, and it broke me. I couldn't stop crying for hours, but eventually I decided I wanted to live. So I decided I'm going through bariatric surgery, which I did by the end of 2005. And by the time I went through that surgery, I also decided I wanted to make peace with myself. I wanted to make peace with the spirit of my dead mother. I wanted to live as part of this world, part of humanity. So after the surgery, I also started to write songs about myself, reflecting about my life. I started working out, do intensive workout aerobics, and I almost lost like 100 kilos, and it took me something like 2 years. At that time, I finally found a new job. I started building myself mentally to get back on living. And at one point I asked myself whether I want to settle in that kind of living. Yeah, I was in better shape mentally and physically, but I knew I wanted more. And by that time, and it was like 2007 or 2008, I also had to leave my old home in the old city, and I decided I want to try living in the big city, Tel Aviv. And by that time I also found a guy that wanted to be my boyfriend, and he was my first boyfriend. And I thought, wow, I'm doing a major step up. I'm going to move to Tel Aviv. I'm going to live my old life. I'm going to live as a partner to someone out there, as a gay person. I'm going to create my own life right from the start. So I moved, and I thought my life would change, and so it did. But my life wasn't happy at all. I lived with him for 8 years, in which we were partners for 5 years, and the remaining 3 years we just lived together separately. And I went through the most painful relationships. I went through severe humiliations. I was degraded so much. I suffered from violence. The first time I suffered from violence is when we were in Berlin once. He beat me up. He initiated this fight, in which at the end I found myself on the floor crying because he beated me up. I even got raped by him. He would not admit that, but I consider that as rape. And the reason I considered that as rape is that once when we began to do sex, I started by asking him to go out, to come out of me, because I was in pain. It was at the stage that I did not like him. I didn't want him even to touch me. It wasn't pleasant for me. And I asked him to come out of me, and he refused, and it was painful for me. And I got to the stage that I screamed, and he refused to come out. I never revealed that to anyone. This is the first time I'm actually telling that. That's why I consider that as real rape. And people should know that rape mostly occur between people who know each other. People tend to think that rape happens somewhere in a dark forest where no one knows you, someone catches you and rapes you. In most cases, it happens to people by people they know, acquaintances, family members, partners, relatives, etc. So yeah, I went through even that. So more or less by the end of our relationship, I also got an offer to compete at the Mr. Israel Leather of 2016, and if I should win, I would go and compete in IML of 2017 in Chicago, but I never thought I would win. No chance. I mean, I had my profile. out there everywhere on Recon, on Gay Romeo, every possible website. But this is one thing and competing is another. I was dead sure that it would be some kind of experience. I would go back home and I would not win. I thought it would be so insignificant that I didn't even tell any one of my friends in Tel Aviv, so no one there was to support me. And when the time of the competition took place, I met the two guys who came to compete me, and I saw them there and I was shocked. They were so beautiful. I thought I had no chance. They were muscular and everything, and I thought I was not even going to go on, and I thought of going home because I didn't even have a chance. But I had one friend there who came and supported me despite everything. And he said, go on with it, no matter what. Go on with it, experience that. You owe it to yourself. So I said, you know what, whatever will be, will be. And I went through, and suddenly I discovered I won. And then I knew there is another stage of coming out. I should be who I am out there, as gay, as free, as a fetish guy, as a leather guy, who I truly am and who I truly want to be. Not just in websites. People should know who I am. So I went through photo sessions at the Tel Aviv shore. I went out in full leather in the streets of Tel Aviv. I went out on stage on IML for the first time in underwear, which I never did before in public. And it wasn't an easy experience in Chicago, but on the other hand, I felt belong. I felt right among fetish and leather. And I knew that I'm coming out. I'm coming to become the real me. Nowadays, I am living in Tel Aviv with my producer to IML, which is Daniel. I don't have a partner now, but I know that my life is becoming the life I wanted to experience for real. And I know that coming out is never one stage. I still evolve and grow. And I go to prides in my leather where I show up in parties. I show up in front of people. I go in the middle of June and July and August in leather. I go in winter times in leather. People see me. My friends know me as a leather guy. My friends appreciate me as a leather guy. My friends here accept me as a leather guy. They hug me. And when I got back from IML, they were so proud of me. They hugged me. They introduced me to other people. You know, this guy is Mr. Leather. And I felt so proud and so happy. And at the bottom line, the funny thing is I always discovered that people surrounding us have no problem with who we are. People on Pride tend to come over and ask to take photos with me. They're so happy. They're having fun. They get to know other stuff, other way of living. They are happy and accepting. At the bottom line, by the end of the day, we have the problem of accepting ourselves. We are afraid of coming out. When we release borders and release ourselves and emancipate ourselves, we discovered that the rest of the world has no problem with that. He accepts us in full and open arms. That's why I think we should all release ourselves and accept ourselves and love ourselves and not afraid of what people would say. Just be ourselves. The world will love us just the way we are. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for listening. I love you all.